So, you guys know how for ages I've been saying that in Kozmo it's better to have the 9 draw spells, one of which is searchable off terraforming, than it is to limit your extra deck and play 3 draw spells. Well, I've been testing that theory and I've come to the decision that I was maybe kind of sort of wrong. Pot of Extravagance is a ridiculous card. It lets you draw 2. Woot. But it also doesn't threaten your main deck, which for Kozmo is the main source of your resources, unlike most other decks where they can get away with playing Desires because either they're playing a ton of hand traps, which don't matter, or they're playing a ton of back row, which don't matter if you banish them. For most combo decks, you can't run Desires, and it's the same thing with Kozmo. You have to run most everything in your deck. You'll definitely want to see at some point in the game. You have to draw Dark Destroyer turn 1, it's super important, and you have to usually draw a Pilot turn 1, so you have to be able to see it. And you can't risk banishing any copies of either of those because they're super important to your late game. The extra deck for Kozmo never really mattered, but it's important to notice that in the past, I've been playing cards that A, I thought were cool looking, and B, had a bunch of weird utility that no one ever sees coming. For example, Felgrand was a card I made quite often because it allowed me to protect itself, and it also was an effect negation, so it had a lot of versatility if I made it going first. Nowadays, you're just running Super Poly in the side deck, so it doesn't really matter, but you have to cut down on those kind of like weird janky cards just to run Super Poly targets, because you realistically don't need the extra deck. So, with that all being said, let's go ahead and just get into it. 3 copies of Dark Destroyer, like, come on, this is simple. Like, it's the best card in your whole deck, like this in Cosmotown, like the cards you have to see turn 1. Under any circumstance, you have to have this, so it's just really, really good. 1 Eclipser, this comes up every now and then, but the main reason it's here is because it's a 3000 untargetable body. It's really spicy, but its effect to negate traps is very rarely used. The only time I've ever used it is to stop like evenly matched. That's only if you open like the nuts, which is like Landwalker, Cosmotown, Dark Lady, Eclipser in a back row, which, by the way, you don't run any back row in this build anymore, because, you know, you got Extravagance, you don't need them. It's just really inconsistent to use its effect, but the fact that it's a big untargetable boy is really nice. But I keep cutting between this and Forerunner for 2 reasons. 1, this searches and this summons, but this is smaller and this is bigger. It comes up, actually, that the 200 damage matters. The reason why is because it's a big damage threshold, if that makes sense. So, like, you know how in games there's characters that have, like, life stats, and most characters are only above a certain stat? Well, once you have an ability to get over that certain stat with a single hit, it's really nice. But with this, being able to crash into 3000 meters and still summon a monster is really nice, or get a resource off of it. This can't do that, where this can. So in those situations, that comes up. 1 Landwalker, you don't really need, like, to be honest with you, I almost want to cut this, just because you're not running you're not running Call the Haunted anymore. The only time you'll ever resolve this effect is if you either summon it with Farm or with Dark Lady, or if you open it and then you just tag out into it just to protect 1 monster. And in most of those situations, it's just not worth it. You'd rather just play something else. Like more consistency cards, you'd rather just draw in other better cards. So I'm almost considering cutting this, especially since I don't run Allure anymore. 3 copy of Slip Rider. I love this card, dude. Like, it's big. It also makes weird extra deck monsters. Like, it allows me to play Pleiades. I actually had to cut Infinity, though, which is why I'm considering putting this down to 2 again. Infinity, with Extravagance, you would have to run multiple copies of both monsters, which means you're running, at minimum, 4 extra deck slots for 1 monster. And I'm just not down with that. I just decided to play the 1 Pleiades, and then if it comes up, it comes up. But the Infinity just was usually only there to end games. So if you have like a Dark Destroyer and Infinity on the board, your opponent's staring both of them down, it's hard for them to deal with both. So you just rather make them. But at the same time, Pleiades is a bounce. It's less resource intensive, and you can play more flexible spots in your extra deck. So it came up more. That's it for the ships. For the pilots, there's actually quite a few more pilots than there's ships. I believe there's like another 3 more pilots than their ships, because the pilots have more utility, especially since Dark Lady exists. 3 tin can. You're not playing Call of the Hunt anymore, but you still want to play 3 of this because it's your main. It's the only one you want to draw turn 1. All the other ones are basically vanillas, especially Dark Lady, which you can't even summon or just normal summon and make a ship. And it's almost always dead unless you summon it off Destroyer. So this is the one you want to see turn 1 because it's guaranteeing you a turn 1 untargetable body. Usually it's Dark Destroyer. Most oftentimes you'll just get another big untargetable boy. 2 Farm Girl. The second one comes up, but you could cut it to 1 if you wish. I like the second one, not only because I like the Ultra Rare. I think this thing is the best looking out of all the sprinting, but they're also really nice to have. I did try the like blind second, board wipe, and then Farm Girl like swing builds, but they're not nearly as consistent without teleport because all of your big power plays revolve you normal summoning. If that normal summon gets stopped, you are boned, dude. Like you can't follow up at all unless you have teleport. And even then, if you have Pilot, Dark Destroyer, and teleport, that's 3 different cards. One of them is a one of, and the other 2, or one of them has to be Dark Destroyer as well. You can't just, it's just not as consistent as it used to be, which is unfortunate. But if we had multiple teleport, then we'd probably be able to play that again. 2 Strawmen. I almost want to cut this down to 1 as well, because this is the one you want to draw the least turn 1. You'd rather draw into any other pilot, that way you can float into this off Dark Destroyer, and then you can revive the Dark Destroyer, but otherwise you just have this, and you're just summoning like a Farm Lady, or a Dark Lady, and then you just pass, instead of having the flexibility of a second pilot. Speaking of which, 2 Dark Lady, like, is there anything I need to really say about this? It's a strike on legs, like, come on. It doesn't float, unfortunately, but it does tag out, which is nice. You'll see weird times your opponent tries to like out this with like Kaiju Slumber or Regeki, or well, nowadays is Lightning Storm, but you can tag out for the Walker summon itself and then pop a town or something, or pop another ship and then get more resources. It's really nice. It's really relevant, especially turn 1, because this is your only real interaction with your opponent in this build, because Dark Destroyer usually is reserved for popping itself, and then if you have a second one in your hand, that's the only other time. 1 Good Witch. This still somehow manages to keep its way in my builds, even though realistically it's a really bad card. But every time I cut it, I always miss it, and every time I do have it, I always hate it. Except for this one time recently. I was playing against a buddy of mine online, and he summoned Buguska in Salad. I normal summon this, activate effect targeting Buguska. He gives me a weird look of confusion, like, you know what Buguska does, right? And I say, yeah. I activate effect to tag out to summon Dark Destroyer in defense. So the reason what will happen is the Dark Destroyer gets summoned and then the Buguska gets set. The reason why is because Good Witch was never sent to defense mode because it wasn't on the field when the Buguska was able to resolve. So it was really cool to have that interaction, and it keeps coming up where it outs weird garbage. It outed 1,000 Eyes back in Kozmo form, or back in Chaos form. It outed Colossus, but you know, you ban that shit too. It's just really flexible, and I don't want to cut it because I always miss it. It's the same thing, like, you know, in like my shit all list, how I always keep saying, oh, I want to cut Caliga so I can play a second Mecha Build, but every time I do, I always miss it. Anyway, 1 Wicked Witch. Yeah, this is what you make late game. Like, this is the best pilot to have when you're dying or losing, just because it stays on the board. It's blocking 1900 damage every swing, so it's really nice. 1 Sword Trooper. This comes up when you want to make Break Sword and then pop your own cards just to get some free stuff, but otherwise it's just a vanilla pilot, and it's really a small one too, so it doesn't really come up. But it's nice to have, just because this is really flexible. You can also summon back Dark Lady, which is nice. Hand Traps, 3 Ash, it's really standard, I don't really need to explain this. And then the one I probably should explain is Gamma. So, usually you'll see people playing Nibiru over Gamma. This build isn't meant to go second in OTK, so I wanted to play this as a going first hand trap. The reason why is because when you go Pilot, Summon Dark Destroyer pop itself, effect in Graveyard, Banished, Banished cost, your opponent usually ashes it, and then you can chain this to negate the ash, resolve the Dark Destroyer, and then you have access to a Link 2, and you have Dark Destroyer, or you can make Omega, but I'm not running that. It's just another weirdly interactive card, and plus, if you're going second, this is the best hand trap in the game, like, hands down, because it can stop literally every relevant card. So yeah, this is really nice. I'm testing it, it's really turning out well, and I think you guys should at least try it. For spells, 3 town and a terraforming, like, when you're not running trap cards, this is your late game play. Is just activating this and recycling straw man to summon Dark Destroyer. This was really irrelevant back when you had more extra deck room, because you can do some cheeky things, like if you have a straw man banished and a slip rider banished, and you have a slip rider in hand, you can activate Talon, add back straw man, effect summon back slip rider, tag out for slip rider, summon pop town, get a Dark Destroyer, and then make infinity. Then if you have another extender like a Reasoning or a Teleport, you can summon another pilot, then summon the Dark Destroyer, and then go for game. It's really nice. So for the draw spells, like I said, 3 Extravagance, I have such mixed feelings about this card, dude. Like, I love it and I hate it at the same time, because like I don't want Kozmo to be a slower, like I want this to be an OTK deck, which like gets your resources fast and then OTK your opponent. I don't want it to be like a resource deck like people keep telling me it is, but no, it's a fucking OTK deck. Fight me. But with this in here, it allows you to play more passively. You can draw this at any reasonable time outside of Kozmo Town. Like, there's no other draw spells in the deck that you have to worry about clogging other than Town, but even then Town has another use other than just drawing cards. So this card's really flexible, but it doesn't mean you get to limit on your extra deck. And realistically, the extra deck never mattered in Kozmo, but when you have things like, when you have access to things like Pleiades, Infinity, Breaksword, and the absolute craziness that is the Ring 5 engine, it just gets to a bit where you feel like you don't want to play super poly targets and you rather just play something you can make right then and there. So yeah, and it also makes it hard to run things like Nightmares, because you don't want to run multiples, but you have to sometimes. Anyway. 3 Call by the Grave. Like, this is the same reasoning why I was playing Gamma, except this does more turn 1, because it stops almost every hand trap in the game. And then 1 Teleport and 1 Reasoning. These are your 2, like, one-of extenders that if you happen to draw, they're just really sweet. By the way, if you guys are here for some reason because you're expecting to play Kozmo, even though there's no fucking tournaments right now, never call 1, 2, or 3 on this. Or 4. Always call 8. No matter what it is. If you're certain your opponent has rank 4 play, if they summon a level 4 monster, doesn't matter. Call 8, because it says summon Dark Destroyer. This stops you from summoning Dark Destroyer if you call 8. That is the most important card in their deck, and everyone I play against is like, oh, Sword Trooper is or Strawman's a pretty good card, I'll stop him from summoning that. I was like, no, bro, I run 2 of that. Dark Destroyer literally summons Strawman, so you want to stop the Dark Destroyer. Always call 8. I don't know why people stop doing that. Anyway, I don't know. You can probably blame Infernoids for that one. Anyway, extra deck and side deck. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly just because the extra deck and side deck is really boring as hell. And the side deck is basically the same thing I have for any of my other profiles, just because, like, you know, the format hasn't changed in 5 months. So, just the one-ofs, Borload, it comes up every now and then. But this is like the one that's most easily cut. You can probably play another unicorn over this. Anima, this is the one you'll make the most often because people are stupid and putting things in the extra monster zone. And when you have a spare tin can, you can literally just normal summon 1,000 Eyes, which is cool. Underclock. And this allows you to make Farm Girl alive. This is really nice. This is probably the Link monster I make the most, just because it's generic. It gets stuff off the field, and if you have like Dark Lady in the graveyard and you have Sword Trooper access, it's just even better. The Nightmares, like, you probably should play some amount of these. I keep cutting back to playing 2 of either, and then just every time I do that, what I usually do is I'll cut like a Phoenix for another Unicorn or a Unicorn for another Phoenix, and I always regret it because I either want to see the Link 2 or I want to see more generic removal, and I always hate it. So I just decided to keep with 1 and 1. I mean, with Extravagance in the deck, it's really hard to play a ton of generic Link monsters, but got to make choices somewhere. Breaksword, because you can make it with the Sword Trooper, Pleiades. These are the only Xyz monsters you ever really need. Like I said, Infinity's bad because you have to run multiple slots, and if you want to guarantee you don't get a hit off of Extravagance, you have to run 2 of both, or at worst, 3 of both. So I decided just to keep the 1 Pleiades because it doesn't really come up for Infinity all that much, and I'd rather have more Super Poly targets. So yeah. 1 Chimera Tech. To this day, I keep seeing people, like, every, like, round 1 or 2, I always see Cyber Dragon somewhere at locals, or even at like, well, not recently, but even at like online, I still see Cyber Dragon players because they're trying to make like Cyber Dragon Eldritch work for some reason, and they always have the Cyber Dragon. They always make me go first or make me go second. So it's fun to just like suck up their whole board and just summon this for no reason. And every time I do it against Cyber Dragon players, they always be like, why do you main this? It's because Cyber Dragons is the worst matchup for Kozmo in history. It doesn't matter. Like, you could even be talking about like full power Monarchs. Even then, like when you're staring down a Majesty's Fiend and March of the Monarchs, you still had plays if you drew Mojo. But you can't deal with everybody sucking up your whole board every single turn. And you can't rely on just Dark Lady Pass, so... anyway, that's it for that little rant. You can totally cut this if you want to. Like, I just hate, every time I cut it, I just always regret it. Super Poly targets, this is the, like, these two are the least relevant ones. This is a remnant from when, the last format, when the best deck was Spiral. These were really good. This is for Salad, obviously, but, you know, it's okay. But you don't want to see, this is the one you'll use the least, so you can play one of it. This comes up every now and then, because I still see Dragon Lake sometimes, so you can play this. The two that actually matter is 2 Starving Venom and 2 Mud Dragon. This is the one you'll make the most, just because it's the most generic of the bunch. I wish we had a monster that just said summon, or just say send 2 monsters. That would be so cool. It could be like a vanilla, but, you know, we'll never get that as long as Super Poly's at 3. Anyway, that's the extra deck. It is really boring, because Super Poly is really limiting on your deck building, especially when you're doing Extravagance. Side deck, triple Nibiru, like, this, like, solid rocks, brother. It's pretty good. DD Crow, the hardest matchup you have, other than Cyber Dragons, of course, is usually Eldritch, just because, like, they can outgrind you very easily, and being able to summon a big 35 beater that I can't target, you know, it's pretty good. You know, I thought I'd be the one doing that, but no, they'd rather summon their big zombie boy and then never die. I mean, man, I wish this deck had that card, because then I could pop Kozmo Town. Like, could you imagine? That'd be sick. 3 Twin Twister, like, I keep wanting to cut this for Cosmic, and I don't afford Lightning Storms. I mean, shit, dude. If I couldn't afford the fucking ultra rare Pot of Extravagance, I sure as hell can't afford Lightning Storms. But I keep wanting to cut this for Cosmic just because it deals with the Eldritch backup or back row more consistently, and it also hits Rogue a little bit better. But this, you honestly hard lose to like Geists, because if they just flip Protocol, you lose. Like, unless you get Eclipser set up turn 1, which, by the way, you're not gonna, because they're never let you go first. Yeah. 3 Chalice, this is like Imperm, but it also deals with Dweller, because if your opponent is just relying on you to go Dark Destroyer, pop something, and you have something on the field, this lets you stop it. But in this deck, unlike Shadal's, you can actually use Imperm better, and you can use this, or you can use it better, you can use Imperm better in this deck than you can in the other deck. Triple Super Poly, like I said, this card's really fucking dumb. I don't know why this card's still at 3, maybe because Invoked is kind of bad now, but like, when you're staring down, like, the full rock board and Eldritch having their, like, 1-card triple negate thing and a Macro Cosmos, like, it's hard to compare. And I guess this is kind of like a necessary evil and shit, but, like, I don't know, Kaijus just do it better. Whatever. I think this card's unfair, but, you know, if it's at 3, I'm gonna play it. Anyway, that is it for the deck. This deck has kind of been in the progress, and it's kind of been on the back burner for a long time. It's still my favorite deck of all time, obviously, because it's Star Wars on crack, but, you know, I have mixed feelings about it nowadays, because it's shocking to me how we've gotten to the point in the format where summoning a bunch of 3,000 indestructible boys that if you do destroy end up floating is actually bad, because they're just it's so easy to deal with stuff like this nowadays. Plus, like, the combo decks, like, if you just stop one, or if you have, like, one monster, you just lose. Anyway, that's it for the profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to talk about it in the comments, I will be checking out there for the next few days. Keeping an eye on it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys later. Peace.